So recently there was like that rumor, lie, whatever you want to call it, which was so dumb, that you declined because you didn't want to shoot off a rack. Yeah. It's like, what? Where do these people come up with this shit is beyond. But I'm actually curious. You finally, it doesn't always happen. Honestly, even we have a podcast, mics on our face. You don't always get the opportunity to be like, no, that was a lie. Yeah. And just kind of like call it out and like fact check them. Yeah. That had to have felt good.
It did feel good. Yeah. I don't know who wrote the article, but I'm sure they didn't feel great about themselves after I did that. So I don't know who their source was, but whoever their source was wrong.
That single comment, that little almost throwaway line, and a candid conversation with Sue Bird was the shot heard round the WNBA world. On the surface, it's just a player being honest about having the hot hand. But for thousands of narrative analysts watching, it was something much, much more. It was the moment Caitlin Clark seemed to finally, if subtly, break her silence on the tension that many believe is simmering just beneath the surface with her head coach, Stephanie White. This one comment blew open what our internal research is calling a narrative fissure. A deep crack between the carefully managed public story the Indiana Fever wants to tell and the one that fans are piecing together from digital breadcrumbs and sideline glances. So what is really happening in that locker room? Is Clark's comment proof of a genuine rift with the coach who is supposed to be her guide through this media storm? Or is it simply fuel for a fan-driven narrative that's spiraling out of control? Today, we are going to connect all the dots, filter out the noise, and dissect every piece of available evidence to get to the truth. This is the kind of deep dive analysis we live for. So if you're ready to get into the story behind the story, do me a favor and hit that like button to show us we're on the right track. It helps us know you want more of this kind of investigation. Now, let's start by breaking down the inciting incident itself. The setting is the WNBA All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis. She sits down for a live podcast taping with WNBA legends, a format she chose specifically to be raw, unscripted, funny, feisty, and absolutely unfiltered. And she delivered. When talking about her shooter's mentality, she drops that line about taking a shot that isn't advised. The competitor video you all saw framed this as a subtle but spicy shade and a cheeky jab, and the live audience laughed, taking it as a lighthearted joke. But online, the reaction was immediate and far more serious. For a vocal part of the fan base, this wasn't a joke, it was confirmation. It was the first public crack in the United Front, and it perfectly validated a theory that's been building for months in Reddit threads and YouTube video essays, that something is off between the generational superstar and her head coach. But before we dive into that rabbit hole, we have to look at the other side of the coin, the official story. Because according to Coach White herself, things couldn't be better. To really understand this fissure, you have to appreciate the official story being projected by the Indiana Fever, and specifically by Stephanie White. Because if you only listen to her public statements, this entire feud narrative would seem impossible. In fact, you'd think she was Clark's biggest advocate. She said, "From our staff and franchise, it's how do we help her navigate all of this? How do we help her protect her peace? Because it can be a lot." These aren't new talking points either. This is the polished, professional, and supportive public posture you'd expect from a head coach managing a global phenom. So that's one side of the ledger. Consistent, glowing praise.
What do you feel like is the most misunderstood thing about you on the court and off the court? The personas, if you will.
Ooh. I feel like a lot of people don't realize like how goofy I actually am. And I think like a lot of my teammates would say that, like, even like Steph White was saying this the other day, like people don't realize like I'm just like comedic relief in the locker room. Like once I step on the court, like I'm super fiery and like I wanna kill, but every moment other than that, it's like it's not serious. Like I just have fun, I have a good time. Like,
did you catch that? Even Clark, in the very same interview, mentions her coach in a completely normal, casual way, referencing a recent conversation. It's a tiny detail, but it's a crucial piece of data. So if the public statements are flawless and the player herself is referencing normal conversations, where is this feud narrative coming from? Well, this is where we, as narrative analysts, have to dig deeper than the press conferences and look at the digital evidence. Okay, now we're officially in rumor territory, filtering through the noise of online speculation, but it's critical to understanding the story. And their conclusion is starkly different. It's a powerful and damning accusation, but is it based on reality, or is something else going on entirely? That question, is it real or not, is the heart of this entire investigation. And the deep search file points to a fascinating psychological phenomenon that might explain everything. Okay, many of you watching have been connecting these same dots on social media for weeks, and you were onto something, but maybe not in the way you think. Let me break that down. It creates a digital ghost, a feud that feels real because it's being constantly reinforced by a community that wants to protect its hero. Have you seen these clips online? Do you buy into this theory, or do you think where there's smoke, there's fire? Let me know your take in the comments below. Now let's pivot back to the title of this video. Caitlin Clark finally breaks her silence. This is crucial. She didn't break her silence by holding a press conference to deny the rumors. She broke her silence by showing us exactly who she is. In that same podcast, she gave us the key to decoding this whole situation when she talked about her dual persona.
What do you feel like is the most misunderstood thing about you on the court and off the court? The personas, if you will.
Ooh. I feel like a lot of people don't realize like how goofy I actually am. Like, and I think like a lot of my teammates would say that, like, even like Steph White was saying this the other day, like people don't realize like I'm just like comedic relief in the locker room. Like once I step on the court, like I'm super fiery and like I wanna kill, but every moment other than that, it's like it's not serious. Like I just have fun, I have a good time. Like
that right there is the missing piece of the puzzle. The cheeky jab wasn't the fiery competitor taking a shot at her coach. She wasn't trying to create a headline. She was just being her authentic self, the person her teammates know in the locker room. And what builds trust more than being able to make a lighthearted joke at the expense of authority, knowing it will be taken in the spirit it's intended? To an outsider, it looks like conflict. To an insider, it might just be chemistry. But to really know if Coach White is the type of person who would appreciate that chemistry, we have to look at her track record. So let's examine that track record. Is Stephanie White the kind of coach who would be threatened by a player like Caitlin Clark? The evidence suggests the exact opposite. This isn't her first rodeo. This is the resume of a proven elite winner who has managed veteran-heavy, successful teams. It is not the profile of a coach who is easily intimidated or would be jealous of a player's success. If anything, it's the profile of a coach who knows exactly how to handle the pressures of a championship run. Okay, let's put all the pieces on the table and connect the dots. As narrative analysts, we are now faced with two competing theories about this narrative fissure. Theory A is what I call the digital ghost. In this version, Clark's comment was simply her goofy, unfiltered personality shining through. It was misinterpreted by an overprotective fan base that is trapped in a confirmation bias loop, seeing slights where none exist. Coach White is a consummate professional who is publicly supportive, and the feud is nothing more than a phantom conjured up by the internet. Theory B is the real friction theory. This one argues that even in the best player-coach relationships, there is natural, healthy friction. An aggressive, score-first player who wants to launch a third, and a strategic coach who has to manage an entire team will inevitably have minor disagreements on shot selection. In this version, Clark's comment wasn't a malicious jab, but it was a tiny glimpse into that very real, very normal day-to-day tension. It's not a feud, but it's not a complete ghost either. Which theory do you subscribe to? Is it a digital ghost, or is there real friction? Let us know in the comments. Now, you might be thinking, why does this distinction even matter? Because the stakes for the Indiana Fever right now are astronomical. The franchise is leveraging the Caitlin Clark effect to transform its future. This is a franchise going all in, and any narrative of instability, real or perceived, between the coach and the cornerstone player puts that entire monumental investment at risk. The pressure is immense, and a digital ghost can cast a very real shadow. So what is the final verdict on this narrative fissure? After filtering through all the noise, here is the most logical conclusion. There is no deep malicious feud between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. The explosive reaction, however, is the real story. The fissure isn't between player and coach, it's between the locker room and the internet. So what's your take on all this? We want to know your final verdict. Drop a comment below with either cheeky jab if you think it was a sign of real friction, or locker room talk if you believe it was just part of the game. And if you believe, like we do, that the story is never that simple, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We are constantly tracking these evolving narratives, and you'll be the first to know when we uncover the next big story. Finally, if you know another fan who's caught up in the headlines, share this video with them. Every narrative analyst deserves the full story.